Welcome to B&B Movie Reviews. This week, Demi Moore battles her younger self, and Francis Ford Coppola returns to build a utopia.
A robot learns a new protocol in the wilderness, and the Joker bids us adieu with his final curtain call. Stay right there. B&B is coming up next.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself. This is The Substance.
Demi Moore plays Elizabeth Sparkle, an aging star who takes a black market drug that creates a younger version of herself. But there are rules to taking the substance, which means things will go horribly wrong. Bryan.
Yes.
I don't want to spoil this movie in any way.
Let's not spoil it.
But I gotta tell you, in the last few moments of this film, I was getting pretty nauseous.
Dude, okay, so I got a chance to see this movie before you did. Now, we talked about it a little bit beforehand, and I did mention to you that, yeah, the third act of this movie goes to a place that's maybe a little grotesque.
Maybe a little grotesque.
I was trying to be,
How about it is super grotesque?
I know, I should have prepared.
And never stops. I'm like, is this film going to end, or am I stuck here? Is this my punishment?
I know. Maybe I should have been a little more upfront with that. I'm sorry. But going back to the beginning, before we get to that third act, and that was the one hard thing about this movie, because going into this, I kept hearing about body horror. The third act.
A lot
of
of references to David Cronenberg.
Yeah, but at the beginning of this movie, it's such a 180 that it's like the way that it's shot and the way that, like a lot of
I don't know. Like, I didn't feel like it was a 180. I feel like it was a build to what we got. And again, I knew something was coming, right? And everyone is talking about the body horror of The Substance.
Yeah.
The concept being that Demi Moore's character, Elizabeth Sparkle, takes this drug that allows her to split into two. And the younger version gets to live her life for 7 days and then switch over to Demi Moore, the older version, and they get to live their life for 7 days.
Has to be exactly 7 days.
Right. And anytime rules are inserted into a movie, someone's going to be feeding those gremlins after midnight, right?
Yes.
That's coming in this film.
Yes.
And at a certain point, one version wants more time than the other version.
Yeah.
And things go awry. And it's an incredibly uncomfortable film, I think, from the beginning, because of the world that Demi Moore's Elizabeth Sparkle is living in.
I think from the jump, you're right. It is a very uncomfortable world, and you're right. I wanted to talk more about her and her performance. She gives such especially in that first act, such an understated performance. It almost, while watching this movie, it seemed like she really didn't have much dialogue at all, and a lot of her performance is really coming through her facial expression.
Yeah, it's a visual movie.
Yeah, more ways than one.
It's about what you are seeing. It's about what you're seeing and how it is being exploited.
Yeah.
And who is it being exploited by? Dennis Quaid has a small role in this film, and the way that he is shot in this movie is almost as grotesque as those last few moments.
Yeah, it kind of foreshadows what is to come.
Those extreme close-ups of Dennis Quaid
eating the shrimp.
No, thank you.
No,
thank you.
I'm allergic to seafood, and this does not make me want to eat seafood. So I'm like, okay, good.
But this is a movie about, you know, how our culture, especially Hollywood culture, disposes women after they hit a certain age, and how we devalue them constantly from the beginning of their career even.
Yeah, and I thought it was also interesting and a little bit meta in the way the director, I want to say her name correctly, Coralie Farge, she directed a movie called Revenge that I didn't see back in 2017.
Also a very good movie that goes to some places that are unflinching.
Yeah, which I'll have to prepare myself if I ever take the plunge into that movie. But her casting, Demi Moore, what this movie is actually speaking about, and I think casting Demi Moore at the stage that she's at in her career also kind of speaks to the overall theme of what this movie is actually kind of going for.
Yeah, like you said, there's a meta commentary going on there.
Yeah.
I do wonder though, you know, this is a movie that features a lot of nudity.
Yeah.
It features a lot of body panning going on.
Yeah.
And I do question sometimes whether a commentary on exploitation actually falls into just general exploitation.
You know, it's interesting though, because I mean, this movie does feel like it has the male gaze to it, but sometimes like the fact that it is directed by a woman, I don't know like if she is specifically making a commentary on that male gaze.
Well, she's
and
certainly
the female
making,
gaze.
but she's certainly making a commentary, right? But I think in just making a commentary, using, you know, exploitative images, like how do you make it so that it doesn't fall into just being another piece of exploitation, right?
Yeah.
And this movie rides that line, and honestly, I don't know where I fall on that at the moment. But we're like two dudes talking about this,
That's
right?
the thing. Yeah.
And like, you know, this movie isn't really commenting on how we see the world. I mean, it is, but it also is not. You know, I'm still trying to process my feelings about this movie. But I do know that it is a movie that has something to say, right?
No,
and that's
it does.
exciting.
No, it does. And like you say, it's extremely aggressive with its point of view. And it doesn't let the audience go. I mean, it grabs the audience and it's like...
Well, it's not a subtle film.
It's not.
It's a hammer. Like you're being bludgeoned constantly in this movie. And I do feel like if you reach a point early on in this movie and you're like, I don't know if I can take this and I need to remove myself, it's best to do so earlier rather than later.
Yes. What's your rating for this?
You know, I'm a little bit conflicted because I do feel like the movie sort of shows its point and delivers its message in the trailer, and then the movie is just an extended version of that. I don't know if I got more out of it by watching more of it.
True.
That being said, the artistry on display is undeniable. The performances are top-notch. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley are so good. Dennis Quaid is great. So I think I have to lean B+ today. Ask me again in a week. No,
you're right. I'm a lean B+ as well. The movie does lose me in the third act because, like I said, I'm not like a big on body horror and the grotesque nature of that. So the movie really lost me in the third act, especially with what it was trying to say. But I thought the filmmaking was so good in the first two acts and all the other components to the movie, like you were saying, the cinematography, the score, and the performances. I think Demi Moore could possibly get an Oscar nomination for this as well. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to go B+. So those are our thoughts on The Substance. So yeah, guys, those are our thoughts. So when we return, Francis Ford Coppola returns to the screen to build us a new utopia. We'll let you know what we think of it. Stay right there. It's a fable. It's a fable. It is a fable.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Listen, you and I ought to have an understanding. You're on my territory now, and you're gonna play by my rules, okay? 1, Crassus is mine. 2, the bank is mine. And 3, and this may come as a little surprise to you, right? Caesar's mine. And he has been for a long time.
Natalie Emanuel tries to keep a straight face when Aubrey Plaza lays down the law about what is hers in Francis Ford Coppola's fable, Megalopolis. Brad.
Yes.
Megalopolis. So there's been a lot of talk about this movie now.
Yes.
Francis Ford Coppola.
The greatest living filmmakers, right?
Yeah, Apocalypse Now, The Godfather Part 2.
The Conversation.
The Conversation.
Jack.
Hey, let's not, you know.
Let's not forget about Jack.
Jack is extremely underrated.
Okay.
We get it on the screen.
It's a lot, okay?
It's a lot.
Like, we got to see this together at the IMAX press screening here in D.C.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we walked into that theater, they were blasting the overture.
Oh, that's right.
And we sat in this overture for 30 minutes, right? And, you know, the images on the screen were preparing us. They were flashing us stills. And, you know, I was getting pumped by this overture because this is a movie. We're going to the movies. This is a cinematic experience. Francis Ford Coppola, this cast is insane.
Oh,
Adam Driver, Natalie Emanuel,
Giancarlo Esposito,
John Voight, Shia LaBeouf, Aubrey Plaza,
Jason Schwartzman.
Jason Schwartzman, barely. There's a live interactive element at some of the screenings. We experienced one of them. So I love that Francis Ford Coppola is like, I'm making this lush, massive movie about America as if it was the Roman Empire at its end. Okay.
Yeah. And on paper, I love that idea.
I got to read the script to tell you if I love that idea.
Well, no, you're
I'm
right.
excited by
You're
the
right.
prospect of it, the
You're right.
promise of it,
Yeah.
right? Unfortunately, I think that a lot of these ideas had been baking in Francis Ford Coppola's mind for a little too long.
A long time.
He went through a lot of revisions.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a movie that has been cooking for 30 years.
It's been in his head for a long time.
And what we get feels like a jumble, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, we have Adam Driver who has the ability to stop time. He is using this special ore,
Like a wand or something. I don't know what it is.
to build a city.
Yeah.
Like basically, he's destroying Central Park to create this sci-fi land. And Giancarlo Esposito just wants to create a casino, and for some reason they're in conflict about that.
Yeah.
The logic of why everybody is doing what they're doing, their motivations, I found very confounding. I also think that while the performances are undeniable, they're all on different tonal levels.
And that was the thing that really kind of frustrated me about the watch of this movie was the tonal shifts and the direction. To me, the direction seemed aimless. Like, I didn't know exactly what Francis Ford Coppola was trying to say
Well,
with
he
this movie.
tells you in the Q&A that we saw right before this that preceded, right?
But does the movie tell us that?
Well, it does, because it repeats the same sentence. You know, we want to have a conversation about the future.
About the future.
Okay, like this is such a centrist film, right?
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Like, we all got to come together and have a chat, and we'll figure it all out.
Yeah.
But I don't think the movie itself executes even that idea. It's funny, I had watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola version. And there is a lot in common with Megalopolis. I think both movies are, you know, operatic. They're interested in the extreme. Melodrama is their delivery system. A lot of different cinematic techniques that are being deployed. There's obviously a passion for silent film in both films. But the Francis Ford Coppola that made Bram Stoker's Dracula, which again is a wild movie that a lot of people don't necessarily love, but those that do love it passionately, that's me. I feel like Francis Ford Coppola had a hold on the tone and the narrative and the themes in Bram Stoker's Dracula, where he is scrambling to hold on to those things in Megalopolis. A fable.
A fable, yeah. What's your rating for this one?
You know, we're the B&B show. We love something like the substance, we give it a B+. We don't love something, we give it a B-. I have to give Megalopolis a B-, but I am so glad that I watched this movie.
You know what? It was actually a really good experience watching this movie. I got to shout out Aubrey Plaza. She was in a totally different movie, but at the same time, I think she understood the assignment. assignment because she was a blast to watch. But yeah, the movie I think is a mess, especially in the second half of this film. It's a B- for me. Like it just doesn't work. But I had a blast watching it. So those are our thoughts on Megalopolis. So,
a fable.
A fable. When we return, Lupita Nyong'o, voices of the wild robots. Stay right there.
After rent and power, I can get groceries. It's sad to say food comes last. Anna from Texas. No one should have to worry where their next meal will come from. Together, we can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
You gotta learn to make stuff up. Come on, find that woo inside you.
Searching. Woo, 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 woo.
Anything yet?
No.
Just have a little fun for once.
Gosling, 0186. There. You see what I did? His numbering is out of sequence.
Fink the Fox tries to get Roz to find that lively spirit inside of her in the latest DreamWorks animation film, The Wild Robot. Brad, The Wild Robot, man.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, like, this was an animated movie I was looking forward to. I loved the animation style, watching the trailer for this.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous film.
Yeah, and it looked like it was reminiscent of some of those movies like WALL-E and The Iron Giant that I loved. So I was really interested to kind of dive into this movie and to see what direction the story was going to go. And I don't know, Lupita Nyong'o, I think first and foremost, as the voice of Roz, this robot that is really kind of acclimating itself to the world of the wilderness, I think really works. But yeah, before we get too deep into it, what were some of your thoughts on this one?
I really enjoyed it. I think it is a gorgeous looking movie, based on Peter Brown's children's novel. Yeah. Although it does take some different themes than that book did. It goes in some different directions. This really is a movie about parenting. I may not be a childless cat lady, but I am a childless cat man. I think I understand what the appeal of this film as a parenting movie, but I also felt like, I don't know, like there's other meanings of life. Not everyone has to be a parent.
No, and I agree with that too, because I'm not a parent as well, but I think at the core of this movie, I think some of the emotions that this movie is dealing with is something universal that I think we all have experienced in one way or another that can be a little bit relatable. Like there are a few sequences, and I don't want to give a lot away about this movie, but there are a few sequences in this movie that really get you emotional between the relationship between Bright Beak. Okay.
Bright Bill. Yeah, played by Kit Connor.
Yeah, and Roz the robot. When she's a robot that has to complete tasks, and I love.
She's a leisure bot, right? Like she's a bot that is supposed to be there for the sake of the humans, so that they can have fun. She doesn't have the programming to be a parent.
No.
And what this movie is about is like nobody has the programming to be a parent, right?
Exactly.
And like that works. It works. It really does. But I also feel like it just reduces the human experience to one task. And I don't know if I necessarily feel that way. Yeah, there's all these different species in this wilderness. They don't necessarily all get along, but how are we going to survive in this isolated woods?
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's what the original book was really about, about survival and less about parenting. And, childhood resentment. The Bright Bill starting to resent Roz a little bit at certain points, and having to give your child up, and it's a thankless task being a parent, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that being communicated in this movie as well.
Yeah. What's your rating for this one?
So I'm on the fence about this one too.
Really?
I think that it is extremely well told. Okay. It's gorgeous. It was not made for me, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, they're going to really, really love it. I guess I'm going to go to B+ just for the craft, but I'm never going to watch it again.
Really? Oh, man. Oh, Brad, that's disappointing.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to go B+ as well. So yeah, I mean, I thought I thoroughly enjoyed a lot of the messages that it was speaking to about community and about parenting, and I think it just has some really, really heartfelt sequences in it as well. So I'm gonna go B+ as well. So yeah, those are our thoughts on The Wild Robot. When we return, Joaquin Phoenix won an Academy Award for his performance as Arthur Fleck. He returns in the sequel. We'll let you know what we thought about it when we come back. Really? Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Going to cheerleading camp next to the abandoned insane asylum, it's like throwing your blood away.
50% of Americans like watching blood get spilled in horror movies, but only 3% donated. Now that's scary. They're sending me home.
Why?
They're saying you're a bad influence on me. This is gonna be good for us. Now I can be at your trial every day. I can see you every day until you get out.
And then what?
We're gonna build a mountain.
You promise?
I wanna see the real you.
Lee Quinzel gets sent home from Arkham because Arthur Fleck is becoming a bad influence on her. But is it really she who is the bad influence on Arthur? In Joker, Folie à Deux, the follow-up to the highly successful and Oscar-winning film. Bryan,
all right.
This is a movie that has been commanding a lot of attention online and off. Yeah. A highly anticipated film. I enjoyed the first movie. Did you enjoy the first movie?
You know, feels like a loaded question.
It is.
I had issues with the movie, but those are personal issues that I had. I do like the cinematography, the directing, the acting, and also like some of the themes of what it had to say, but with that comes some things that I just didn't really vibe with that first movie. But I do appreciate what that movie was. I think
it's hard to vibe with a Joker film, and I think that's kind of the point. I think Todd Phillips is actually a pretty antagonistic filmmaker and enjoys being so.
And it seems like so in this movie too.
Yeah, like I think where my issues with this film rest is probably in the title, Folie à Deux, a shared delusion. I could have used more shared delusion, right?
Yeah.
You know, when he meets Lee in Arkham and they strike up this relationship that slowly builds into some kind of romance, the movie then shifts gear and becomes a courtroom drama. And Lee, Lady Gaga, who is so good in this movie, is relegated to being a person sitting in a chair. And it's, you know, like a movie that just takes its paces plot-wise until we need another boom, we need another shift, which we do get, and then the film becomes something else.
The film is kind of trying to speak to some interesting ideas when it comes to like the duality of Arthur Fleck and the movie, but I think sometimes it's a little too late by the time we get to those points.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because like, I do think there is a message in this film, whether Todd Phillips wanted it to be there or not, although I have a feeling that he did. And it's not so much about Arthur Fleck, it's about the fandom that arises around Arthur Fleck. You know, spearheaded by Lee, Harley Quinn in this story. You know, they want Joker to be the icon that was created based on the climax of the first film. You know, he goes on national television, he kills Murray Franklin, he becomes kind of this symbol for the city, let's burn it all down. And you hear that over and over again in this movie, we gotta burn it all down. We want Arthur Fleck to be the Joker. But maybe Arthur Fleck doesn't want to be the Joker, but it doesn't matter what Arthur Fleck wants.
No, it doesn't. But see, I think that's my issue and why I really couldn't get on board from the beginning, because the one thing I did kind of appreciate from that first movie is the trajectory and the journey of the character of Arthur Fleck. He goes from being this guy who is not seen. He's not seen by society. He's not seen by women. He's not seen by, you know, the comedy world that he wants to be a part of.
Yeah,
and
this
then
is part one. Part one is this is what happens when you leave an incel alone. That's what the first movie is.
And then he rises to get on the Murray Franklin show. He kills Murray Franklin on air. But then when this movie starts, it feels like we're back to where we started in the first movie.
At least emotionally for Arthur Fleck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it's a little dull. That being said, the performances are extremely strong. You mentioned the cinematography of Lawrence Shear, incredible. The score I really like.
Yeah.
The music, you know, this is a musical, not amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I think pretty poorly staged. I think fairly ineffective as a musical as well. And there was an opportunity. It does disrupt the pacing, but the pacing itself was already disrupted in its script, right?
Yeah.
And so when you encounter the inner life of Joker through these musical sequences, at times I feel like it does inject some energy, but then the energy of those sequences I just found very dull.
With the character of Arthur Fleck, it would have been good to see the continuation of where he was as the Joker and to slowly start to see that kind of chip away.
Yeah, but I think we do get that though, like because I think by the end of the movie, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think he makes a decision that his fan base do not like, and his fan base turn on him as a result. And that's the end of the movie.
But he's constantly struggling with that from the beginning
until
of this
the
movie.
end. But you're saying like you want to see him explore that slowly, and they do, very slowly. I'm not saying it's good, but I do think he goes on a journey.
I don't really see the journey of Arthur Fleck in this particular movie because it's almost like he ends up right where he starts at the beginning of the film.
I don't think so. I think at the end of this movie, you know, at the end of the first film, he's the Joker. At the end of this film, he's not the Joker. And that's a choice he makes.
But at the beginning of this film, he's also not the Joker.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
It's like we should have started this film with him being.
I'll give you that. It does. Yes, it feels like we're back in the first third of Joker 1.
Exactly, and that's why it feels so repetitive. At least to me, it feels so repetitive because it feels like we're starting again with him as Arthur Fleck trying to find his way, and then he gets motivated by Lee.
Yeah, and I think the ending of Joker 1 exists in the musical sequences of Joker 2.
Yeah,
you know, like where he is feeling his most self early on in the movie or during those musical sequences, that's where he escapes to.
This feels like The Joker was a 300-page novel and Folie à Deux is the epilogue.
Yeah, I don't know. You read the interviews of Todd Phillips, it seems to me the way that he is rewriting history is that he never really wanted to do a comic book movie, but he was using the IP nature of Hollywood now to tell a story that he wanted to tell. It becomes this billion-dollar success. He sort of resents it, and then he goes on attack against comic book culture and comic book fandom in this film.
Yeah, which what he was trying to do in the first movie, I'm not opposed to. I'm not opposed to him taking an IP to tell your own story that you want to tell. I actually find that kind of interesting. But yeah, now coming into, because it was so successful, coming into this movie and feeling like, oh, okay, now I'm going to start to tear it down.
But in hindsight, what did he want to tell with that first film?
Well, that's the thing, because now it relegates the first movie to like, what was the whole point of this?
The whole point of the first movie was it was a pastiche of, you know, Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy.
Exactly, but this one,
it's okay to mock and pay homage to Martin Scorsese, but it's not okay to mock and make homage of DC Comics. To
DC Comics, yeah. So what's your rating for this one?
It's a huge B-. I didn't like it.
No. I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot, but I agree with you. To me, it's one of the worst I think I've seen.
It looks great. And it does have a lot on its mind.
It does.
But no thank you.
The cinematography is beautiful. The performances, especially from Lady Gaga, I think is great. I do like some of the motifs from the score, but the story and everything else, the pacing, none of it works. It just all falls flat. So it's a B- for me. So, yeah, that's Folie à Deux. We bid you adieu. So let's go ahead and recap what we discussed today. So today, The Substance, me and Brad gave that a B+. Megalopolis, we both gave that a B-. The Wild Robot, we gave that a B+. And Joker Folie à Deux, we gave that one a B-. So, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies.
Did you watch Joker?